Welcome to our second video about life at TA Aquaculture. In this episode we have a short clip on the Birmingham charity fish auction on December the 1st, 2019 and the problems with Artemia, storing, hatching, raising and troubleshooting. Hope you enjoy it. Debbie took this film at the build-up to the auction. When it got started, we were both kept very busy and didn't get a chance to do any more. We hold these in June and December. This is basically a chance for breeders to come and auction their fish. We raised some money for the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal, which is donated at the end of the day. We started doing charity auctions in Redditch around 2000, where the first auction raised around £30. And built this up to a point we could donate £800. I think we were the first to come up with a fish auction which donated the money raised in commissions etc. to charitable causes. In fact, the next one in June 2020 will see 20 years since we started them. We started them off again after a couple of years break in the new venue in Birmingham. This is starting from the bottom again, but slowly more people are coming in. The Redditch auctions started mostly with members of aquatic associations and serious fish keepers, but the new auction started out with interested local aquarists, so they are both different. The serious breeders are slowly coming in and things look good for future auctions. It would be great to see more associations get involved in these auctions. It's a great place for some free publicity. The British Live Bearer Association put on a small tank and a few of the lads were there for a chat and some free advice. I've been hatching brine shrimp for 50 years and I'm still learning. 90% plus hatch rated eggs are pretty easy generally, but what if you try cheaper eggs? You might find some bits and pieces here useful. Newly hatched brine shrimp are just about indispensable for growing fry. Even bigger fish will take them. We use large quantities of eggs in the fish house and feed fry and some larger fish daily on freshly hatched nilply. From a food standpoint, when they hatch they are packed with fatty acids which fry need. It's best to feed as close to hatching as you can, as the nilply burn these reserves up as they move around. Under the microscope you can see these nilply are triangular in shape. You can also see some floating eggshells here which have been ruptured to let the nilply out. I just took some from a hatching jar to show in this piece. Normally you should try to avoid putting shells and unhatched eggs into your fry tanks. As the shrimp grows, this fatty acid is reduced and protein levels start to rise. These days you can get various hatched or shellless Artemia. Some is just dead and dried decapsulated, but others are live shrimp in stasis without shells. These are stored in super saline solution which keeps the nilply dormant. In the shop we have products under this heading including the dried decapsulated which doesn't hatch. I'm going to take this piece in sections. Firstly, storage of the eggs. The first major mistake people make is storing eggs in the freezer. If you do this you need to acclimatise them slowly up to about 15 C or 60 Fahrenheit. Eggs at cold temperatures revert back to a hibernated state and most likely will not hatch until they have been in the hatching jar for 3 to 6 days. Even if you put them in the fridge at +3 centigrade, you can expect longer hatching times. In winter we still send eggs out. They are okay at lower temperatures. If they are delayed or left standing in very cold areas, they can take longer to hatch when you get them. It's best to store eggs at 10 to 15 C or 50 to 60 Fahrenheit prior to use. Another big factor to understand is oxygen air in the storage container. The Russian eggs we do in the blue pouches are probably the best packed of any brine shrimp egg. These pouches are flush with nitrogen, which means the oxygen is driven out before sealing. Also, they're packed with a preserver, which looks like a white powder. This is perfectly safe for fish. In fact, this is the same thing used to preserve the sausages we eat. If you buy cans, you will find they keep better if you use a resealable bag and exclude all the air. Open cans will start to give poorer hatches over time as the oxygen will kill them. Store them in a dry, dark condition. Don't let them get damp, this will kill them. The next section we'll talk about is hatching. Lots of videos on YouTube about hatching eggs out. Many show pop balls hanging upside down or using Imhoff cones, which are cone-shaped tubes with a tube at the bottom for air and harvesting. In our fish house we use glass jars for speed of cleaning. You can use glass sweet jars, which are hard to find these days, or pickling jars, which you can find in supermarkets. We use reef salt. This may sound expensive, but we buy it in large quantities and put kilo bags on our shelf in the shop at a low price for breeders. The alternative is cooking salt. Don't use table salt as it contains the anti-caking agent hexacyanoferrate. Rock salt can be used, but it can contain impurities and care should be taken if you use this. The amount of salt to use is roughly 1.5 teaspoons to a pint of water. A hydrometer is a useful piece of kit and quite inexpensive to buy. I prefer the glass type. You can get plastic float tanks which are quick but can fail, especially if dirt accumulates on the float and will give an inaccurate reading. If you use a hydrometer, the hatching salinity should be SG 1.020. Some eggs can vary in optimum salinities, but generally this gives a good hatch. pH is another factor. This should be pH 8. If it gets lower and into acid conditions, it will affect the hatch. Temperature is also a consideration. It will hatch at a wide temperature range. If it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit or above, they can hatch in only 15 hours. If it's cold water, they can take longer and can take 3 days. I've never found hardness to be important. We use soft water, which is GH1 out of the tap, but the reef salt buffers it up to an acceptable level. In the past I used cooking salt in water of GH10 with no problems. Lighting for us is just normal daylight. Newly hatched Norpli are photosensitive and will be attracted by light. I would point out that Russian eggs are different to US eggs. They hatch over a 2 to 3 day period, so don't throw the hatching jar away until all the eggs hatch out. Russian eggs are known to be slow to break dormancy or to come out of hibernation. This is perhaps the main reason you may have trouble hatching them. Utah eggs tend to hatch out in one go mainly. It's a good idea to use glass jars for hatching. These can easily be bleached and sterilised before use. In the next section we'll look at some problems you can get along the way. It can be a common email. I can't get these eggs to hatch, they're no good. 9 times out of 10 it is easily resolved after a few questions. I have had eggs returned as non-hatchable and had great hatches from them. Artemia are mostly easy to work with, but sometimes you need to look a little deeper at the reasons they are not hatching. This can be broken down into the following areas. Egg storage. Have they been exposed to extreme cold or heat? Water in the hatching jar. Use tap water and make sure this is dechlorinated. Just leaving aerated water to stand overnight will dechlorinate it, as chlorine is a gas which will escape from the water. If you suspect your water has chloramine in it, this can be removed in several ways. Ultraviolet radiation from a recirculation system, boiling or aerating overnight, using a sodium thiosulfate based dechlorinator. Chloramine is a mix of chlorine and ammonia and takes a little longer to remove. I don't think this is used in the UK, but I may be wrong. Salinity. If you get problems using cooking salt, try marine salt or reef salt. Make sure it's SG 1.020. Temperature. Aim at around 23 centigrade or 75 Fahrenheit. If you hatch at too high a temperature and check eggs after 24 hours, you may find an orange sludge at the bottom of the jar. This means your eggs have hatched early and died off. High temperatures reduce oxygen content in the jar. pH. Make sure it's pH 8 or a little above, but not lower. You can add more sodium bicarbonate. This will only get to pH 8. It does no harm to put more in at this level and may help if you have problems hatching. If you absolutely cannot hatch eggs after exhausting all the guides mentioned here, you can still decapsulate the eggs and feed these to your fish. There are lots of articles online and other films which go into using hydrogen peroxide to dissolve the eggshell. This is just a short film to act as a basic guide. We recommend that you look up other guides on how to do this online. I think it's worth mentioning a bacteria which can be found in hatches. This is called Vibrio. It's a marine bacteria which doesn't do any harm if you put water from the culture into a freshwater tank. It's always best to rinse out the sieve containing the newly hatched Norpli in clean, fresh, aged water. Charts showing the growth of this bacteria can be found online. They can produce at an alarming rate. One way to prevent this is to use a brine shrimp disinfectant in the hatch. This is mainly made with tea tree extracts. In the next section we talk about growing them on. When I raised them on in Malta, I used round blue bowls. It was easy to walk down to the sea and collect the water. This was SG1029, so I weakened it down a little with fresh water. These were just fed yeast, but water changed every couple of days. They were quite easy to raise on. We grow Norpli on here in the UK as time allows. This can be a real challenge, especially if you want to do this regularly. You can get lucky a couple of times and then it all dies off. Believe me, it happens to commercial growers and people with vast experience in doing it. Expect crashes and failures along the way. To start with, you need the right egg, or cyst as they are called. Growing some can be very problematic, and we recommend using Artemia franciscana. These eggs hatch smaller than those you are probably used to, and cost a little more to buy, as they are expensive to buy in. Hatch the eggs out in the normal way. As soon as they hatch, strain them out as you normally harvest them, and put them into a growing container. This can be a large glass jar or a plastic storage container. We use the latter with about 6 gallons of water made up with reef salt to a higher salinity of SG1025. Make sure the water is aerated but not too violently. As a first food, some aquarists use milk, but we prefer baker's yeast mixed with a little spirulina powder. In fact, you can use this up to adult size as they will filter it out. In the past I used Interpet Marine Liquifry, which also worked well. Be careful not to overfeed. A little and often is the key. Too much will crash the culture. You can feed 3 times a day. The rule is only feed when the water has cleared down. Overfeeding is a big no-no. Filtration in the container is always difficult as the Norpli are so small. It's not really an important factor as long as you don't overfeed. As they get bigger, you can introduce a fine grade sponge filter. As the shrimp grow, they will transform from the triangular hatched shape to swimming on their backs. As the shrimp get larger, they can take live spirulina, which we culture alongside the growing containers. Adult shrimp will feed on the bottom and sift through the algae and debris for food. A little bit of extra information you might find interesting. Sometimes in feeding the Norpli to your fish, the odd unhatched egg will get into your tank. A lot of debate has been put into literature and online over the years, where some say the eggs will get stuck in the fry's throat and choke them, or get stuck in the internal organs. Others say it's not a problem. Personally, I've never had problems like this, but you always need to keep an open mind in fish keeping. Also, uneaten Norpli will die off and pollute the water. It can also contribute to outbreaks of velvet or rudinium. This usually occurs in acid water. To help prevent this, remove uneaten Norpli and water change regularly. Also add sodium bicarbonate to put the pH over 7 if your fish will tolerate this. Adding a little salt can help prevent velvet and keep the Norpli alive longer. Some fish types will not tolerate salt, so you should do some research on them before adding it. They keep bringing new things out, and this is the separator. The eggs have to be bought specially for this piece of kit. The shells are treated with a non-toxic magnetic material. When you put the hatched eggs in the tumbler, the base attracts the shells, so you can separate them from the hatched Norplow. It's a clever idea. There are videos on the YouTube about this one. We have these in the shop. Thanks for watching this episode. More to come in the next one. Please hit the subscribe button and bell below and you'll receive notification of future videos.